Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 26th episode of the Urban Lunch Talk series on the topic Positive Energy Districts and Climate-Neutral Cities. I am Jennifer, and I work with communications for the Driving Urban Transitions Partnership. I have the pleasure of moderating today's webinar, and I also have with me today my colleague Christoph Gollner, who is the coordinator of the Positive Energy Districts Transition Pathway in the ULT. I hope you're all having a nice lunch wherever you are, and as usual, please let us know in the chat where you're joining in from. And during the lunch, remember to keep sharing your comments, ideas, questions. We will devote some time to answer questions from the chat, so take the chance and ask our speakers some questions. Also note that this webinar is being recorded and we will later publish this on the Driving Urban Transitions YouTube channel. Today we have a panel of experts with diverse perspectives and experiences in relation to positive energy districts. Hanne Mangelschutz, Simon Schneider, and Anneloos van Noort. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for being here with us today. And before you can introduce yourself a little further, I will hand over to my colleague Christoph for a brief introduction of today's topic.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Happy to be here and be in that discussion with you. Well, what is it about? Europe has a big ambition to be climate neutral until 2050, and more than 100 frontrunner cities are trying to achieve that goal already by 2030. Quite a big ambition, and we are talking a lot about the how, the processes that need to be in place to be able to implement solutions for achieving climate neutrality. And it should be like that. We're talking about governance models, business models, instruments, processes. But there is still a need for discussing the what. What are we actually talking about? How do we define a climate neutral city? How do we measure it? How do we define exactly positive energy districts and their role within climate neutral cities or climate neutral neighborhoods? How do these terms relate to each other? We don't want to have that as an academic discussion, although it very much is so also. But the goal is really to make these terms tangible for a wider public and for especially the policymakers in order to be able to do the how, to develop the processes to implement these solutions. JP Urban Europe and the DOT partnership have been working for more than 6 years now with the concept of positive energy districts. We have already had all in all 4 calls with topics on positive energy districts. A great group, a great critical mass of experts breaking their brains on this issue. And we're still in the discussion and will further develop the concept and the contribution to the climate neutral city on the way. But what I'm happy is to discuss with experts from the projects that we have funded so far, what their findings, what their thinking is about exactly these relations that we've been talking about. If you want to dig deeper in that discussion, there's the opportunity to join what we call an agora, a broad stakeholder, a much more interactive format. That will take place on the 14th of May, and it would be great if you're interested in this topic and get a bit deeper into the narrative and the definition and the framework of positive energy districts. Please join there. Registration is still open. And with that, I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Yes, thank you for the introduction, Christoph. Now let's give the word to our panel guests to introduce yourself, your background and your experience. And maybe we can start with you, Hanne.
Hey, my name is Hanne Mangelschutz. I work for a non-profit organization as a project lead called Architecture Workroom Brussels. We focus on how social spatial transformations are needed in light of societal transitions. And so for the last 7 years, we've been also doing that for the energy transition. I was together with my colleagues, coordinator of one of the first generation PED program projects, which was called Cities for PEDs, focusing on the role of cities, city instruments, but also how those could influence and be involved in neighborhood dynamics, for example, to accelerate the PED implementation. In that light, we also made a toolkit with practical building blocks from examples all over Europe for local initiators such as cities. We're also still doing that. We are now working in a district in Ghent, where we are trying to make further steps on the implementation, the practical implementation of energy district or positive energy district logics. In parallel to that, I'm also doing a research at the University of Ghent now in light of a Horizon project called Neutral Path on PCEDs, is what they then call it, positive and clean energy districts. And my research is about if and how a district scale approach to the energy transition could lead to new social, organizational, financial arrangements that allow for an efficient, affordable, and especially also just energy transition.
Thanks, Anna. Let's hand the word over to Simon.
Hello, from Vienna. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm with the University of Applied Sciences in the research group that is focusing on climate neutral building and district solutions. I am a physicist and energy engineer by trade. And I started my career actually 10 years ago on the development of net zero energy building simulation tools. Back when that was the question, how can we get positive energy buildings coming from passive house and net zero energy building paradigms. And for the last 6 or 7 years, we've been researching positive energy districts. And the way this started for us was really with an initial exploration project that posed the question, what are the future requirements for our cities and in particular for collections of buildings, districts? So we had a research project that was called Zukunftsquartiere in German, which is roughly translated to future districts, where we initially set out to map the future requirements that the building stock will have in our hopefully decarbonized future, and work backwards from there to see if we can get some insights into purely hard facts on the steps that needed to be taken for different districts so that we can reasonably claim that they are in line with the future requirements in terms of energy demand, in terms of energy savings, in terms of CO2 emissions. And what we came up then with was a framework that connected our Austrian national climate goals to the climate goals of the building sector, and from these climate goals of the building sector to the climate goals of each individual district, where we could then say, depending on the differences in the district's physical, topological characteristics, the targets and the goals for these districts in terms of energy and in terms of emissions can be quantified together to adhere to these future scenario goals. So this is what I've been working on the last couple of years, which has now transformed into the positive energy district paradigm. It's now transforming more and more into the climate neutral districts paradigm. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Simon. We are happy to have you here as well. And now to our final guest, Anna-Loes.
Hello and good afternoon. everybody, also from my side. So my name is Anneloes van Noort. I have a background in spatial planning and landscape architecture. At the moment, I work for the Flemish government. Flanders is a region in Belgium. And I work at the Department of Environment and Spatial Development as a researcher on environment and climate. And I link energy and climate transition with spatial development. So in the last, I guess, 10 years, we have carried out several research projects on energy and space on different scale levels. So from quantitative mappings on renewable energy potential to more qualitative research on the role of spatial planning in the energy transition at a Flemish level, over developing guidebooks for energy regions, but also down to the neighborhood level. And at this neighborhood level, we have developed this concept of climate neighborhoods, which is very much linked, of course, to this positive energy districts concept we're talking about today. And we have driven into the concept of the neighborhood level because for us, this is really very much the level where abstract ambitions like policy goals, but the whole energy and climate transition becomes very concrete. But at the same time, this neighborhood level also offers the opportunity to scale up individual actions, because what we see, at least what we see in Flanders, is that it's very much focused, the policy at the moment is very much focused on individual actions and not so much on collective actions. And if we see the ambitions we have regarding energy and climate and the pace we are having now on redeveloping our neighborhoods, we're not going to reach our goals. So we have to step up our game. Moreover, we also see that neighborhood level offers opportunities to link several challenges because, of course, our neighborhoods are not only faced with energy challenges, but also challenges regarding climate adaptation, greening your environment, but also on more sustainable mobility, on circularity, and so on. And all these transitions are very much linked and become very concrete at this neighborhood level. And that's what our goal is overall, to develop towards a more sustainable and a more healthy living environment. At the moment, we are looking on how to expand our pilot projects on climate neighborhoods towards a more program-oriented organization, so we can support more local governments in Flanders in their ambitions to becoming climate neutral. Besides these research activities, I'm also involved in several European programs, among which is also the DUT partnership. I'm mainly involved in the PED transition pathway as one of the vice chairs, and I'm contributing towards the further strategic development of the pathway. And for me, I'm mainly interested in linking these research results and this evidence to policy making, and also to making the move towards implementation. Because of course, my background is in a regional government, and we're very much interested in how we can use this collective research results to influence also our policy making. So I'm looking very much forward to this discussion of this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Anneloes. And I think you already stirred up a lot of these questions in your introduction on some of the topics we're going to discuss. And also, Christoph, in your introduction, we mentioned positive energy districts, we have climate neutrality, and I think it would be interesting to start our discussion here. How do positive energy districts contribute to climate neutrality? What role do they have? And why is this particularly interesting to focus on the district level or neighborhood scale? And Anneloes, you already mentioned this in your introduction, but maybe some of you others could fill in why this is so especially important.
I could begin on that if that's. I agree with a lot of things that Anneloes has said. We said before to enter this webinar, we have to be careful indeed not to speak too much from the Flemish context. So that's also, we also work in Brussels, in Flanders, and the Netherlands, which is entirely different, but still has morphological similarities as well. But the neighborhood has the scale in between individual households and municipal or regional planning. Also, we see has a lot of potential, because indeed there starts to, or opportunities for integration start to become visible, especially also if we speak about the energy transition. On the one hand, it's reducing electricity, but it's also supplying sustainable heat to housing or residential areas, amongst others. It also requires an enormous shift. It requires renovation, but also shifts in our habits, in how we use energy. There's a lot of opportunities also that become visible on the local level for exchange between different energy users that have different energy demands. There's also different sources. So geothermal could be linked to aqua thermal sources, to maybe there is a residual heat somewhere. So those opportunities become very visual, tangible on actual places. And for that reason, it makes sense to look at that district level. At the same time, a lot of discussions we had on the sense and nonsense of doing things at district level. The question is how strictly you define a positive energy district as being self-sufficient or producing more energy than it consumes. On also are you then also, for example, taking seasonal differences into account? Which extra energy is used in winter? Where is it coming from? These kind of discussions. I think the position we take there from a more practice-oriented perspective is, by 2050, all our districts will have to be climate neutral. And so let's use the dynamics, the budgets, the time, the capacity of this positive energy district concept to not only look at the exceptions only, and so those places where there is a lot of money or there is an exceptional source that could fit in a strict definition of PEDs, but strive for a definition and a program that supports especially also the difficult areas where there's a lot of already existing urban fabric, where there's very little space, it's very densely built areas where there's a lot of vulnerable families living, for example. So I don't know, that it touches upon the definition of what a PED is and how it contributes to climate neutral cities, but maybe I would also like to make a plea for a focus of or a more strategic definition of what PEDs could be in light of a larger energy transition or transition towards climate neutrality that we're trying to develop.
Mm-hmm. If I might add, from the research projects that we've been doing with positive energy districts, one of the main reasons why municipalities pursue these projects is a distinct lack of suitable tools and instruments for district scale spatial and energy spatial planning, and in particular climate sensitive spatial planning that takes into consideration these future goals. So I think the main reason why we're talking about positive energy districts is not so much the positive energy definition, that is a whole jar of worms, I guess, can of worms, but really having the district approach being anchored in the planning process and having certain instruments in place that are not yet established for municipalities, for developers to negotiate and ultimately develop suitable strategies and implementation pathways to achieve more ambitious goals. So that's the main point. And then there's, I think, a couple more important aspects when we look at the difference between the building development and the district development. The district development process has the advantage that many of the qualitative goals that wants to be achieved are more easily addressed, such as open space design, social mix, suitable daylighting, lighting conditions, comfort, etc. It's much better to have this in a district approach rather than each individual building developer having their own goals. And I think one also important aspect is resource pooling, such as when we go into the mobility aspect, but also in terms of energy systems. Then districts allow for more efficient systems that can pool resources, bringing down energy and emissions intensities, but also possibly costs. And ultimately, what we see from the modeling and the simulation of dozens of different districts, by grouping individual buildings together with their different requirements into districts, it is possible to achieve more ambitious goals overall. Because they're achievable together, not by individual buildings and individual operators, but as an ensemble. So the sum really is bigger than the individual parts.
If I may add one thing, I think it's also, I mean, you mentioned the energy system side, where kind of the decentralization plays an important part. But it's also kind of the urbanistic side that a lot of approaches in urban planning and urban development kind of strengthen the bottom-up perspective, the quality of life perspective, and the actual people you're working with. And I think the positive energy districts concept, and that's also part of the complexity, I would say, is that it's not just a kind of a technical concept that just needs to be somehow applied in terms of infrastructure, etc. But it also aims for kind of mobilizing local communities and kind of enhance the quality of life within a neighborhood and a district. Talking about energy communities, for example. So the district approach is kind of relevant on many levels, although I also think, and Anilos mentioned that, I think we are in a phase where we need to kind of put the learnings from these many projects and case studies that have been done in the kind of the direction of PEDs. We need to find the kind of the common solutions that can also be translated on in a more multi-level perspective, including the citywide level, the national level, and sometimes even the European level. And kind of finding this balance and interlinkage and interaction between the different levels.
Yes, to add to that, for me as well, I think, like I also said in my introduction, all the different spatial levels have their role to play. And for me, the focus on the neighborhood is a focus on a new scale level where we as spatial planners have not looked at that often yet, but indeed in the energy transition, it has a very much important role to play. But I also think that by linking different transition challenges, you automatically link with different skill levels. For instance, if you want to look at your mobility, and mobility is very much intertwined with reducing your energy needs and being more energy efficient by transitioning towards more sustainable types of transport, then immediately you make your link with your neighborhood towards your city and towards your city region, because of course your mobility is not only for your neighborhood, but at the same time, if you're looking at climate adaptation measures, you're making the link to a much smaller scale level, because for greening, very punctual interventions are so important for reducing your heat effect, for reducing water problems, and so on. So it's not only the district level here that's important, but it's linking the district level with all your other levels to make a comprehensive narrative for the future. And indeed, also referring to the need to link further the energy policy making with spatial policy making. I think indeed we already, well, at least in Flanders, we have a lot of spatial instruments which could be used to also implement a lot of our energy related developments. But these links have not yet been made. So it's really searching for the right instruments at the right time, at the right place, to help implement also our energy ambitions. But it is still a bit of a struggle and a bit of a search to look at the right instruments at the moment.
Yeah, I feel like you're all saying that there are many great positive energy district projects, initiatives going on, but they are not linked in the best way at the moment. So how would you say that we can support the implementation of positive energy districts and link them together and evolve towards such a program that you are mentioning?
For me, that would very much be working together more with other entities within our Flemish government. So that's more on a Flemish level on how we can support as well local governments, because you see there is a lack of capacity, both in people as such, but also people with the right skills. But also, of course, money-wise, we need more investments in this local level and in this local transition. And there we're looking very much also to other examples in Europe, and that's why it's so interesting as well for us to work within an international partnership. So we can look at examples like, for instance, the Netherlands, where they have a whole program on making their neighborhoods natural gas free, and is not only focusing on what's happening within the neighborhood level, but it's linking it with policy making at the national level as well, and not only towards one ministry, but linking policy making between different ministries at the national level in the Netherlands. And that's very much something we can learn from. How they do that and how they gather barriers at the local level that are linked to policy that's valid at the moment at the national level, and they try to overcome these barriers by working together. And I think that's really a key word as well in the whole PED discussion. It's working together, working between sectors, but also between skill levels.
Yeah, I agree. We also we also try to exchange with these Dutch programs, which are very interesting. What you see is the question also of the district level or of the local level poses questions to where do you organize or where do you put decision-making power, or where do you allocate budget? So is it a regional level, or is it a municipal level, or do you even have a district budget to start implementing budget and a committee, or I don't know, or team to start implementing PEDs as we now discuss in a more integrated way? Yeah? Because if you see, indeed, if you start looking at micro or district level, district scale heat grids, for example, you open up the street, what can be, you link it to climate adaptation, you link it to mobility. Also, you should link it to mobility and climate adaptation, because where you source this geothermal heat or where you transport it has an impact on where you could add trees and greenery and so on. So what's really visible if you, on a practical level in the district, is that the battle for space, and so the need for an integrated approach. But there's still a lot of there's many ways in which this integrated approach can be shaped. So it could be collaborations between different departments within a city, or is it really dedicated teams that need to work completely differently together? Those governance, financing, organizational questions are very important. And what's interesting about the Dutch approach is, of course, that it starts from tests, living labs, experimentation environments where different types of these models are also being tested. So there's districts in which 100% of the heat infrastructure is owned by citizens. There's other cases in which it's a combination, public-private ownership, these kind of things. So there's a wide variety of systems of types that are being tested, while learning indeed at a regional or at a national level of how those could be fostered or supported at a supra-local level. And I think that's also what we need. That's also what the DUT program could provide, and maybe also it has a similar idea, of course, to start testing in actual labs or actual environments.
If I may add two perspectives that hadn't been mentioned so far, or partly only. I think what we see in terms of kind of managing the implementation processes or mainstreaming processes is that there is a strong need for capacity building in the cities themselves. So we need to enable the cities not only by providing solutions and models, but also kind of giving them the resources, both the resources, but also the knowledge and the ability to work with these solutions. I think that money is involved here, and but also kind of training in building these capacities. And the other thing is coming from a European program. I think actually, and even though all processes tend to be too slow for the ambitions we have, I think we see some good things going on, also in a top-down perspective, if you will, with the EU having launched the Green Deal and the goals behind that. I think a lot has been going on in the last few years. Like we see national programs popping up in many countries. Sweden is a very good example for that with the Viable Cities program, but also in the Austrian context, we have a national mission to achieve the goals that on the European level are also needed to achieve. So as we see in many countries, France also, Romania, that it kind of I don't know how to say, trickles down also in the national and regional and city contexts to really shape the programs that are needed to kind of promote implementations. And as I said, processes tend to take longer than we would like to have them, but I think in many ways we are on track to set the framework conditions that are needed for wide-scale implementation.
Is there someone that would like to add on something to this discussion? Otherwise, I found some interesting questions here in the chat, but I will open up if there's something else on this. Okay, let's dig into the chat then. There is a few questions that covers the topic of new development versus refurbishment, and I think this is a big topic. So what are the specific challenges when it comes to refurbishments and like understanding the achievability. And I can also read out a specific example here from Muse. The Brainport region in the Netherlands are looking into the existing districts as a combination of business parks and neighborhoods which are located in the city area. How can we establish PEDs in such districts, taking in several perspectives: social behavior, legal, economic, and technical? So quite a long question here, but I think this is a very interesting. So how should one think when we talk about refurbishment, and what are the challenges there?
If I may start, like I mentioned, we're having these projects on climate neighborhoods. And from the start, we explicitly said, well, we want to look at existing neighborhoods because, well, the first reason was that we have a goal in Flanders to have no more net land take by 2040. So no more new developments on new greenfields. So we really wanted to look at those refurbishments and renovations of existing neighborhoods. And secondly, we also thought, and maybe this is a bit short-sighted, but we also thought, well, these new neighborhoods, these newly built neighborhoods, that is not where the challenge is. At least not in Flanders. We have our rules, we have our zero emission buildings. It will work out for those neighborhoods. But what is going to happen with all those houses in Flanders? And we have a lot of houses, we have a lot of neighborhoods, we have a lot of non-efficient housing as well. So non-efficient use of space. And we have a lot of very, very old buildings. I think the buildings in Flanders are among the oldest and less well isolated in the whole of Europe. So there is a big challenge over there. So that's what we wanted to tackle also within our projects on climate neighborhoods, how to deal with all these neighborhoods in Flanders, where we also want to reach our ambitions. And one thing we saw is that at the moment, legislation in Flanders is the same for each building, each neighborhood. So whether or not you're a heritage neighborhood or you have other certain specificities, it's all the same. We all need to renovate to the highest energy label. And it's all the same whether or not you have specific opportunities for district heating or not. And that's something we might need to reconsider, that a one-size-fits-all solution is maybe not the way to go. For instance, it might be more efficient, more interesting to not renovate your building up to the highest standards, but instead use higher heating temperatures, for instance, with a district heating system. And then you can save costs for not renovating that deeply, while still being energy neutral, because you have a higher temperature for your heating. So those are solutions that are now not really possible with the current legislation, but it might be interesting to look into this. And of course, also related to the heritage issue, we have a lot of heritage buildings in Flanders with high quality. And if you all want to renovate them in the same way, we lose a lot of our identity of the brick stone houses we have in Flanders, which is which constitutes a lot of our building identity, and then you lose that. So it's still a bit of a discussion on how to deal with that.
Could I add to that? Because there's two things maybe I would like to say about the difference between newly built and existing districts. In the Cities for Pets project, we really we had districts of the both, and it was a challenge in itself to organize a conversation because realities are entirely different, starting points are entirely different. So in the toolkit that we made, for example, we also try to look for what could the both learn from each other, and there are some things that are interesting. So I don't know, even from very top-down zoning plans in newly built areas, the question could be, how could those be translated also to instruments that are applicable also in existing areas? But of course, the main difference is in existing areas, there are already people living there. There are already dynamics, and it's extremely hard to plan those or to intervene in those via planning methods. At the same time, it's an enormous opportunity to improve life in those existing districts. So that should also be the reason of the energy transition in those districts, that they could become not only a technical optimization, but really an urban improvement programs. I think we very much believe that the energy transition is something more than only a technical optimization question, because if you look at existing districts like that, it will not work. But also it's an opportunity to build new collaborations, to start from ideas from citizens, from local businesses, from local organizations. And the opportunity in existing districts is also that's where you could start. And that it doesn't all have to come from a public government, either at the local or at the regional level, or which will be needed also from an economic perspective. So there will be public and larger public funds needed to kickstart or to set up guarantees, for example, for local energy projects. But to realize this in an all-encompassing way will also require private funds and cooperative funds and civil crowdfunding and so on. And the advantage in existing districts is that that's your entry point. You don't have to, and actually it doesn't work if it's all planned and you then ask via a bit of participation, does this work? Okay, let's go. You need to start your planning processes entirely different. And then a second thing I found interesting, that in our district in Ghent, but also in other projects. So I was at the presentation of the Muppet project recently, in which they looked at actually how new developments and existing fabric could together form new types of projects. So especially for to make the business case for low temperature heat solutions in existing districts, it's extremely difficult. But if you already have the guaranteed offtake it could be a large business, it could be a newly built residential area in the district, it could be a large sports complex, whatever. But if you already have that as a base for your local heat infrastructure, it decreases the risk and the financial risk of heat solutions that you're building for existing districts. So I actually like the question on how a combination of business parks and neighborhoods within the city could actually offer a lot of potential, exactly because you have the combination of the newly built and so infill newly built within existing urban areas, and then the existing either heritage or way more difficult to refurbish parts of the city. Of course, that could still be considered existing districts, so it doesn't apply for entire new district, but especially as Anna Loes indicated, but in Flanders, but also in other parts of Europe, I think those entirely new districts are becoming the exceptions because we are already consuming so much land. And so
I saw we received a new question here. So we talk about that we should focus on all these different levels, right? It's not only about the technical dimensions, the social dimension, and here we have a provocative question saying, why is it a must-have to be super integrated in various dimensions that overall kill the speed and add too much complexity?
That's a very good question, and Hannah and we also discussed a lot on this in our project. I guess there's two answers to this. One, the pragmatic answer is, if your district does not require it for the development of highly energy efficient, renewably sourced district, and you have other means to ensure the quality of life and the quality of the process, then it's not required. Just many district developments typically struggle with exactly this kind of questions. And here is why the positive energy district paradigm has shifted to start and try give some answers. If you don't need answers and you can just focus on the technical questions because you have other instruments already in place, then it's perfect. Then you can really, and that's what we also try to do, set quantitative targets and find technical solutions that meet these targets. So it's really not a question either or. It's not either technical solutions or qualitative and social best practices, but it's the question of what is required for each individual district to get a step forward. And we see from the experience in the last couple of years that many districts actually struggle with these aspects much more than they struggle with the actual technical implementation.
yeah. Oh no, go
No, go ahead, Hannah, please.
Yeah, it's true that we had a lot of discussions about this. I remember from a Brussels context in Cities for PEDs, where energy poverty is very high, where there's a lot of pressure on affordable housing, for example, which touches upon also the more there's renovation processes going on, the further also people who with lower budgets to rent are pushed out of the city. This gentrification processes are really happening within the city. Those are the background for the energy transition and the PET we were looking at, and so that's where our plea for integration started from. Of course, if in Stockholm you have legislation and instruments to keep rents low or to include heating supply or provision in within rents, if you have a very solid social system, sure, maybe it doesn't have to be linked. If there are if I don't know, you have a lot of instruments and to manage mobility and climate adaptation separately, sure. But what we experience is that either you cannot uncouple both. So if you invest in new infrastructures, in refurbishment in a district, that will have an effect on affordability to live there, for example. So it's not either or, that is one question. And at the same time, there is already a limited, there are limited budgets, there is limited capacity. If you link efforts, you don't need to do participation planning processes for energy on the one hand, mobility on the other hand, climate adaptation on the other hand, living, housing on the other hand. So especially when, and that's maybe typical for the Flemish case, we have a lot of individual private housing. So many families live in a house that they themselves privately own. So if we are renovating in this context, it requires all those individual families to agree to pay for this. So it's an incredibly it's a huge effort. And it's not only a technical effort. It's not only developing an offer to which they say yes or no, or developing a planning instrument that will oblige them to do so. It requires explaining why, how, looking for subsidy schemes to allow for people who don't have the means, and so on and so on. If you do that effort that's in, say, already social, better do it not only for one challenge, for one ambition or goal, but to do it for the whole improvement of your districts. But that's, of course, our perspective. Maybe from other contexts that could be contradicted. And in the long run, that will not be slower, but that will be faster. That's, I think, our conviction.
I completely agree with what Hanne just said, and this also comes back to the biggest challenge, which is the transformation of the existing building stock. We're working here with a kind of a living organism, with actual people living there, and just, I mean, Europe. We don't have to talk about positive energy districts, just about refurbishment rates, and it's very often stated that they are way too low to get anywhere close to decarbonization. So the processes to comprehensive renovation, refurbishment processes in a situation that goes beyond an individual building maybe is one of the biggest challenges in general. And as Hanne said, with all the different ownership structures, if we only focus on that would be already a big achievement. And dealing with kind of actual people and owners there requires some kind of ambition also of these people to be part of the process. In that sense, I would, but to also respond to the agent provocateur question. On the other hand, I think we also need to have some kind of limits. It's not everything is. I think there is a need for sometimes also when we talk about technical infrastructure. This is basically, these are top-down solutions that can be done also. I think there's also kind of a responsibility from on the policy, on the side of politics, to do the right thing in a way, and kind of bring that together with the need for engagement, involvement of actors, of citizens in the process. But on the other hand, there's a bit the tendency in public politics to say, no, we cannot do anything because everybody needs to agree. And that is also kind of fleeing the responsibility. So finding that right mix of top-down, bottom-up solutions is important. But for cities, the most important selling point to their citizens is raising quality of life. It's not about some technical things about an energy solution, but what cities need to get their citizens backing them is an improvement of their environment. And this is why we integrate the concept of positive energy districts in a wider discussion on improving improving neighborhoods and cities. Sorry, that was a bit long.
Oh, very interesting and great point, Christoph. And I think this is a topic that we also had with us. So how can positive energy districts contribute to a just transition? And the end goal is really to create environments for people living in cities. And we also had a comment from Linda Carton earlier that how on collaboration, the difficulty to really include not only social housing cooperatives, but also private homeowners. And you discussed this, that it is a a lot of different types of housing, and that is already existing in cities, because most of our cities are already built. So this is where a big focus, as you also mentioned in your research projects, have been. We're starting to approach the end of this urban lunch talk, but we still have a little bit of more time. But I would like to do the do and a don't, which we usually finish off our webinars with. So I'm interested to hear, and maybe I can lift you in, Anna-Los, first, to share with us a do and a don't when it comes to positive energy districts.
Well, if I can continue on the discussion we just had at adding complexity, if you want to link challenges, I would say don't be afraid of linking, because I do think you should approach it from a positive side and see the opportunities you actually have in a neighborhood when you link different challenges that there are in a neighborhood. And those are not only the big transformation challenges we're looking at, but that could also be very small things that people that are living in that neighborhood are dealing with every day. For instance, we also have a research project in social neighborhoods and looking into how they can become climate neighborhoods. And there you see there's very much a need for more social inclusion, like, for instance, offering a space to meet for people. And that is something that is very tangible and actually quite easily to be offered to those people. And if you can link this meeting space with a bigger renovation that is needed of the neighborhood, you can quite easily get the people living in a neighborhood involved and actually quite enthusiastic about how their neighborhood could change towards the future to be more indeed livable, more healthy, more connected to the rest of the city as well. So a do not be afraid of making your transformation process bigger by linking, because I do think that in the end, like Hannah said, you will save time and you will save money in the long run. A do, on the other hand, for me, it's always working together, cooperation, collaboration, exchanging, both within a neighborhood, but also internationally. For me, it is so interesting to see what's happening in other countries and the opportunities we have to exchange through the DOT partnership with other countries and see what's going on there, learning from them. So that would be a do from my side.
Thank you, Anna-Los. And Simon, can you share a do and a don't in a short way, please?
Yeah, don't get caught up in all these theoretical questions. Should we include definition aspects here and there? What is the difference? What is more important? Don't get caught up in these questions. What is more important? We are well past the point where we think about this. We need all solutions for new build districts and for renovation. It's no point arguing why some aspects are more important than others. They are all equally. I'm not saying they're all equally important, but we know very well what our mission at hand is. So let's just develop the concrete solutions that we need on the ground, and do realize that they might be still tailor-made and individual. So we might not be able to extrapolate and scale up each individual solutions for all the other districts, but we know very well what we can do on the ground. So let's focus on that, would be my plea.
Thank you. And Hanne?
I'm really gonna stay in line with the others. So my don't is a do, or it's a matter of phrasing, but indeed don't hesitate to include or start from social dynamics in a district and to make it more complex. I wanted to add there's a really nice management book. It's in Dutch. I don't know if it exists in English, by Hans Biel. That's called "Are You Stuck? Make It More Complex." So if on a certain scale or level or within one system you cannot solve it, try to see with which systems it is connected, or to which scale it makes more sense. I thought that was very beautiful. And so do invest in experiments, in testing different approaches in learning from those examples. So as a city or as a region, don't set and of course it's normal that in a period of instability, when things are very unclear, to try to set a direction, but we're not at the point where we can say that there is one way to do things. Make room for experimentation and support that experimentation.
Thank you for your do's and don'ts, everyone. And we have reached 1 o'clock, so I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this very interesting discussion today. And thank you to all of our guest speakers. It's been really interesting to hear your perspectives. And as usually, we'll find a recording of this Urban Lunch Talk on our YouTube channel. And please sign up to our newsletter to not miss any upcoming ones. And I already have a tip for you on an upcoming Urban Lunch Talk that will be hosted by JPI Urban Europe that will address new perspectives and approaches on urban transition. So this is a talk that will follow up on one of the sessions from the DUT conference. So check that out. But thank you, everyone, for today, and looking forward to see you soon again.